Welcome to another episode of the RAG podcast. And for those of you who don't know, the RAG stands for Recruitment Agency Growth. Since early 2019, I've been interviewing the most successful and innovative recruitment owners to learn how they rose to the top of their game. In season 7, I'm going to be having raw, authentic, and insightful conversations with agency owners, entrepreneurs, leaders, people across the industry. And I want to be learning about their ambitions, what's happening behind the scenes in their agencies today, and their plans to navigate difficult market conditions. I'll be bringing you the latest and greatest recruitment stories every single week on Wednesdays at noon across multiple platforms. Stay tuned. Hello and welcome back to another episode of the RAG podcast. On this week's show, I am so excited to be rejoined 4 years later than my first episode with Chris Abbass, the CEO of Talentful. Talentful are the world's leading embedded talent recruitment solution for the best technology companies on the planet. I had Chris in my studio in London in 2019, just before COVID, when he had, in 4 years of starting a business, he'd grown to 150 people. They had 9 million in revenue, and he was just about to open their fourth office. They had London, Manchester, Berlin, and it was opening in San Francisco. 4 years later, their last company accounts was over $36 million pounds, $42 million. They've grown in headcount. They've got offices all over Europe and the US. He now lives in New York. We did this remote, of course, but it's not all been, the best thing ever. They had some huge issues in the pandemic. They grew in the boom of 21-22, and then they really struggled again in 2023. Chris is incredibly honest and vulnerable in this episode. He talks about the things they did wrong, the things they learned, and he also talks about some unbelievably exciting new initiatives that they're looking at as well. So if you want to listen to the founder, the CEO of one of the most cutting-edge, innovative recruitment agencies on the planet, tune in to this episode. Without further ado, Chris, welcome to the RAG podcast.
Hello, Sean. It's been a while.
It's been a while. 4 years, part 2. Can't believe it. 2019 you were on. It's gone, has it gone quick? I don't know.
Yeah, fast and slow at the same time, I feel like. It's, we need to make it a tradition.
One of the most eventful 4 years in history, probably. Never mind just for your business or mine.
Imagine us predicting what has happened the last few years on that podcast. I mean, you couldn't have. It would have been impossible.
I'm literally so just to set the scene for people, right? December, I think it was December the 10th or something, 2019, you came into my office in East London and we recorded Talentful at the time. You were 150 people, 9 million in revenue, just opened an office in Berlin. You had one in London, a small one in Manchester, and you had you were moving to San Francisco in the January, right?
Yeah.
If I look at my life, I had a team of about 15 in East London. I was married to my ex in a really, really, really bad situation. That week, my life completely fell apart. That week I recorded with you, and I won't go into it, but that's where my marriage ended that week. Then we hit the pandemic. I mean, so much has happened. Where are you today? You're in New York, is it?
New York, yeah.
Yeah. So you're still stateside, but you're no longer a tech wizard in San Fran. You've moved on a bit.
Yeah, exactly. Wanted to come a bit closer to the UK.
I bet. So tell us, give us the bird's eye view of Talentful today, because I'm sure everyone knows the business, but I'm sure they'd be interested to know. And then let's go back and talk about the last 4 years.
Yeah, sure. So where we are today is we're Talentful, and we provide embedded talent solutions to some of the best technology companies in the world. We have offices globally, so across Europe and the US, and our clients range from seed stage and scale up companies that have a lot of potential and are growing really quickly, to the kind of household name enterprise companies like your Alphabets and your Atlassians and Microsofts. Now, two of the additions to the business since we last spoke is we now own the world's largest in-house talent community, which is called Hire, and that has over 12,000 members. And so that's part of our business now. And we also have recently launched, it's in beta stage at the moment, a tech platform called Talentverse. And that's a way for candidates and teams to match automatically without a middle person. So that's in beta stage at the moment.
Are you planning on killing your own business with that or not?
Supercharging our
Yeah.
business. Yeah.
Yeah. You're not going to cut the actual talentful people out, though, are you?
No,
Hope not.
I
Hope
think
not.
that's a long way away. Yeah.
Do you know what? Literally, I've been on about AI this week, and I believe how you use AI. There's so many amazing ways, but majority of it is nowhere near as advanced. And no, it's not as it's advanced. It just doesn't do what people think they can do with it, and they're not. It's
Hmm.
nowhere near ready to replace us in this industry yet. That's
No.
just a fact. So I mean, off air, you told me, was it 36 million in revenue last year that you
So
wrote?
the last company's accounts, which was posted, which was for 2022, we did 36 million pounds in revenue, which is about $45 million. Yeah.
So that's 4 times the revenue of 4 years ago.
Yeah.
So you've had an unbelievably busy few years, I imagine.
Yeah.
So let's go back to the start of that. So you leave. I mean, I'm not expecting you to remember leaving my office on that night, but it's funny because some of the people I interviewed in like March 2020, we were like laughing about this pandemic thing, and then it's like fuck. But I do remember you said January 2020 you were moving to San Fran. So take us back. You just hired someone out there in the December?
Yeah.
What was that like? Take us back to the time when you moved out to San Francisco.
Yeah, so it was awesome actually. So, this was pre-pandemic. This is when, no one knew what COVID was. And so we launched full of excitement. I think one of the reasons we moved initially was because we had a lot of demand from existing customers that wanted us to support them in the US. So luckily, through those relationships, we had some kind of foundational clients that we could, hit the ground running with. And we were able to leverage those because they were pretty big names. We were able to leverage those to get into other businesses as well. So we actually hit the ground running pretty nicely. We signed, some big customers, but also some small ones to build our reputation. And we're also partnering at the time with kind of a go-to-market agency that helped you kind of get in the door to a bunch of different clients and helped you with your kind of sales strategy going into new markets. So that was an interesting experience too. So things were going really well. We had a small team. We were renting an office from a friend of a friend. So we got a really good deal on an office. Everything felt great. Being in a new city, all the energy, exploring a new place. It was
Did
just
you go on your own, or were you a partner or
no,
everything at the time?
no. We launched with a guy called Jack Carville, who is one of my best friends, but he actually joined the business as our managing director for kind of expansion. So he joined the business about 6 months before we launched in the US, and he'd taken another startup to the US previously. He's a general counsel, he's a legal guy by trade. But he joined and he put together kind of the plan for us to move into the US. So everything from kind of company formations, visas, our strategy, offices, just all the logistics as well. And so it was the idea that we'd hire him in the UK, and then we'd get him a visa and he'd come and live in the US. His partner at the time, well, still is, his wife now, is American, so based in San Francisco. So we joined with him, and then we also brought over a bunch of other folks that have been kind of long tenured, proven people from the business, which really, really helped because you could lean on those people to embed the culture, to represent you. You knew that when you put them on a client assignment, they were going to do amazingly well and build that reputation in a new market. So yeah, we launched with two people from our UK office, a guy called Damien and a girl named Evie. And then we also had two other people that were supposed to come over. One of them got their visa, and then one of them didn't because they couldn't get it in time because everything shut down due to COVID. So they had to wait until everything had passed and they could get into the country. So yeah, all of that happened. Basically, we had a really good start, and then February, March, the pandemic happened.
What was that like though for you personally? Like, so you're in a new city, you're away from home, you're building a bit of traction in an office. Were you out there? Did you move on your own, or did you have a partner with you? Like you
I was on my own to start with, yeah. And then
so
my partner joined me.
You went from friends and family, and then how quickly did it? Because it felt like it crept on us in the UK, and then it was like bang. Whereas other parts of the world, I think, saw it a bit earlier. What was it like in San Fran?
It was the same, really. I feel like it was. I remember flying. I just come back to the UK. I think in March, around March time, and I was flying back, and it was when people were getting a bit weird. Like you were sat on the plane, and people were like, getting wipes out and wiping their seats and stuff.
Yeah.
And it was a time where you're like, these people, what are they doing? It's like, this is going to be over in a week, No one really knew how serious it would be. They just thought it was something that was going to pass. And then very quickly, we went into lockdown, travel restrictions, companies started panicking, and the economy took a hit. And I think I wasn't so bothered about, obviously it was a weird experience being in a new city and everyone working remotely. All your new team members working remotely. And I think you've got to remember at that time, people have forgotten, but if you would have asked your team to work 100% remotely at that time, they would have told you to get lost. And they would have said, there's no way I'm doing that. They would have left the company, right? Now, if you tell them to come in office, it's that they leave the company, right?
Yeah.
So people's habits change very quickly. But that was a very hard thing for people to do at the time, working remotely, not having access to people they like spending time with or their managers, or communication was tougher for people. All of that stuff was, for a new business, a new team, was really, really difficult. And then on top of that, you couldn't go out and meet clients. A big part of my strategy when I landed was just getting out and meeting as many people as possible, right? And trying to network and build those relationships. And that was put on hold. So that was the toughest thing. It was like you couldn't take actions to improve your situation, really, because you were just.
How did the wider business? Because I imagine some of your customers must have said, "Well, we don't want you. We don't need you right now because you're there to grow." And it felt like there was a global hiring freeze for a short period. I know it picked back up, but
Yeah.
what was that initial cut like? Did you have people pausing contracts left, right, and center, and did you have to make difficult decisions? Like, how did you cope?
Yeah, definitely. So, yeah, exactly as you said, it was. At the time, our business is very different now, but at the time, we had a lot of smaller companies that we'd work with that were maybe on like 4-month contracts or smaller contracts, or they might have had break clauses in their contracts, or they were very heavily dependent on VC funding. A lot of our clients were VC funded tech companies.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of pressure at that point for people to put hiring freezes on, or to stop, or to just cut spend as much as possible.
Slow it down.
Yeah. So because no one knew what was going to happen, and it was almost the unknown was the scary part. This is a situation that we'd never been in before. No one knew the severity, how long it would last. So they were just like, batten down the hatches. Let's just stop. The interesting thing, though, which is very different to the last year we just had, where kind of everyone in tech suffered, is there were winners and losers in COVID. Like, some businesses ended up doing even better than they'd ever done before during COVID, because everyone was indoors and spending all their money, right? So you had like some of our clients just started going absolutely bananas in terms of growth.
Did you work with Peloton?
We didn't work with Peloton. We worked with
They
Hopin.
went mental, didn't they?
Yeah, Peloton went mental, but I don't know if you heard of Hopin. They were the video events company, and they were the fastest company to ever hit $1 billion valuation in Europe. Wow. And we started working with them when they were 30 people, and we scaled them to above 1,000 in like a year, right? So it was like an insane amount of growth. And so we had partners that would, it was a tale of two halves, really. You had companies that were really struggling, and they were dependent on like, retail shopping or physical interactions, events, whatever it might be. And then you had companies that just did better than before, because people were bored and they were spending lots of money playing video games or virtual events or virtual exercise classes or whatever it might be. So that was an interesting difference between the last year. So we managed to leverage some of those clients, and also like online delivery, like food delivery went mental. So like Deliveroo's and the Gorillas at the time, and a bunch of other e-commerce delivery companies were doing really, really well. So yeah, it was kind of mixed, really.
So did you see a significant dip in revenue over that first 6 months?
Yeah, so we did dip in revenue for, I think it was very short and sharp though. Yeah. It was like, we one or 2 months we dipped in revenue, and it was like a V. It was like down and then straight back up, and I think that was because it was just uncertain. Once people felt like they knew what was happening, and they learned how to deal with it, that they put their foot down and they went and started spending money again.
And then we saw the biggest boom probably in our careers, right? Between the end of 2020 and mid 22.
Yeah.
Everyone I know had the best time ever. Like the printing money. There was like rookie recruiters doing like
Yeah.
$500,000 in year one.
Yeah.
So what was it like for the in-house community that you were running?
It's interesting. Yeah. I always say that my grandma could have set up a recruitment company during 21 and 22 and made a fortune, right? Like that.
Yeah.
Like there's, whilst it was a really great couple of years, and I'm glad people did well, I don't think it's much to brag about because, it wasn't a normal environment, right? And I think people that are just sat around now waiting for it to come back to that are misguided because it's not going to happen, right?
What do you think the main reason it was so good? Why was that year or 18 months so spectacularly different?
Well, I think, people dramatically overcut during COVID, I think. And they were caught off guard by how fast it bounced back. So they made these big layoffs and they were on the back foot and they needed to right size. So that meant that there was a pent up amount of demand. And then because people were inside and, remote working, they were saving money on commutes. They were spending lots more money on products and services, which meant companies were just doing much better. And then that had a trickle down effect to businesses like our services businesses that are helping them grow and build their businesses. So I think that there was just lots of cash and lots of people built up records amounts of savings over that time. They were saving lots of money because they didn't have to travel, they didn't have to commute, and that just proliferated the whole market and meant that everyone did well, which is kind of a nice thing. But it doesn't last forever, unfortunately.
No. How did the San Francisco business grow? Talk us through the kind of trajectory that you went through.
Yes. So interestingly, actually, to take a step back on that, when we were down during kind of COVID and it was really tough, it was still like you thought. There was moments where you were like, "Fuck, if this carries on, like we're screwed," right? Yeah. If it hadn't, and it did bounce back, but you didn't know it was going to bounce back at the time. And I think we did some pretty creative stuff during that part of time to win business. And one of the anecdotes was I was a member of an investment syndicate. So they go and get investment opportunities for startups, and you can put money in to invest in these companies. And I was on the mailing list, and you would see that all these companies, the money they were raising was to hire people. It was like, that's what they were doing. And I was like, okay, if I invest in some of these companies, maybe I can follow up after my investment and say, hey, I've just invested in you and I've seen that you want to make 10 hires. Like, can we jump on the phone and chat? Because they know that you're invested, that they've surely got to take a call from someone who's just invested in their company, right? And there's kind of aligned interest there. And so I literally... So this is the interest. So I was like, look, I've got this amount of money in the bank. This is my savings, right? Like I am, because I thought that the business was in danger at this point, and I was like, look, I've got to do something. And I was like, okay, I'm going to take the risk. I'm going to go. I'm going to put my fucking savings and I'm going to put it into this investment win these investments with some hope that I can reach out. And one of our clients a couple of our clients had cancelled in San Francisco. And bearing in mind, we're a brand new company, we didn't want to burn too much money. We didn't want to have too many people on the bench. And so I invested, I sent an email, the person replied immediately. And the long and short of it is we ended up winning the business. And that really materially kind of helped us during a really tricky time.
How many investments did you have to make?
So, yeah.
You're not even eating for another week.
So look, I didn't have enough money to keep investing. So it happened relatively early on. But I think you've just got, in those times, you've just got to have hustle, right? You cannot give up. You've just got to do whatever it takes to make money. And so anyway, I just thought that but when the boom came back, I think there was a natural reaction from people to just take as much work as they could, right? Because take as much, just service it the best you can, or figure out a way to service it. And I think that how we approach the situation, which I'm very glad we did now, actually, looking back, is we said, okay, there's so much demand here. We had a wait list at one point of 16 weeks. So we had, from when a client signed a contract to when we could actually start with them was 16 weeks, because we just couldn't hire people fast enough to put on accounts. And we said, okay, what mistakes did we make that really screwed us during COVID? Like, what are the things in our business that were kind of the weak points, that meant that we were vulnerable when a downward turn in the market happened, and how can we rectify those going forwards? Because the time that you can be pushier with your terms, you can be pushier with your contracts, is when you've got lots of demand. Like when you're scrambling around for revenue, you've got to do whatever it takes. You have to be as flexible as possible. That's supply and demand, right? So we felt, okay, we're going to take advantage of this situation. We're only going to sign clients that fall within our very strict criteria, which is, minimum length contracts of X, no break clauses, this amount of margin, X, Y, Z. And we stayed very, very strict on that. And I think that is one of the reasons why we weathered the recent downturn so much better than a lot of our competitors, because we managed to stay strict on that stuff. But anyway, in terms of the growth, it was insane. Like at one point, we were adding 100K of revenue every single month.
Wow.
Onto our business, and
how many people do you need to service that? An extra 10 people?
Practically, yeah.
So you've got a real recruitment and training challenge on your hands there.
Yeah, really tough. And obviously it was compounded because during that time, everyone was experiencing growth. So recruiters were in like record demand.
Yeah.
Salaries were going through the roof. Retention was really difficult. There was all these other challenges that were compounding on top of you winning all this business, which made it very, very difficult. And I have to say that whilst it was obviously it's really cool to grow fast and all that kind of stuff and make loads of money, I think that I would prefer a more stable market than the one of 21 and 22, and I think that you can, great businesses can do well in normal markets. You don't have to have a market like that. And I felt it was it was so crazy that anyone could have done well. So the best people didn't necessarily stand out because, there was so much demand that I feel that clients would have just gone with anyone at one point, whoever could have started the fastest to some degree. So it meant that you having a better service or better quality of people didn't really matter at that moment to a lot of companies, because they just wanted the service right now. How were you getting
the business? So you've gone from being so creative, you're investing in the companies to get the work.
Yeah.
What was the route to getting the business 6 months, a year later? How is that coming about?
Yeah, so luckily we have a good brand, and we just had lots of inbound traffic. I think there was a couple of months of the year where we were getting 100 inbounds a week, which is just like,
and they're actual inquiries. People can we talk about working with you?
Yeah, and so a lot of those might not have been the right level. They might have been too small or whatever, but you still a lot of people coming in. We do have a sales team that we're dealing with, like outbound sales as well. One of the real challenges at that time, though, was, you also had your existing partners who wanted to expand.
Yeah.
So you had existing partners that you wanted to prioritize because they're the people who are with you and you want to maintain and build those relationships. You then have new business coming in. You then have sales opportunities that are outbound. And it did create an environment that was quite difficult to manage, because you've got salespeople who want to close their deal, but there's only a fine amount of resource that you can actually service accounts with. So you have to choose, okay, where do we put this resource? To an existing client that's been loyal to us for the last 2 years and wants to grow their team, this inbound business, or this business that the sales team have got. And so the demand was just so high that you could not service it all. It wasn't possible.
How do you work out the ratios of getting that right? Like, have you got kind of like a loose formula that you guys live by that says, like, for this many people, this many accounts, this much revenue, etc.? Again, trying to piece it around in my head a bit.
Yeah, so I think this is maybe evolved over time, but I do think the most important thing is to double down on your best current customers, like your customers that have been with you, that you have great relationships with, that have a lot of potential. I think you want to give them like an unparalleled service. So they stay with you, they grow with you, you become a really great partner to those people, and you can go on a journey together, right? So you
Yeah.
can, if they want to go and expand in Singapore, they come and speak to you because they love working with you. And that can open lots of opportunities and be really mutually beneficial. So, and it's a lot easier to keep a customer and expand with one than sign new business, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's wherever we can, we'll always focus on our existing customers and prioritize our existing customers. I think that is the number one thing that we try and do now. That hasn't necessarily been the way we've always thought, and we've made mistakes along the way that maybe allowed us to think clearer about that. Because it is tempting to go for the shiny and newer brands that are coming in, or something that might seem a bit sexier. And then I think that the rest, from where it comes from, we don't have a split in terms of, okay, it has to come from inbound or outbound sourcing. It will really be the quality of the opportunity after that. So, we have a scoring system for our opportunities, which might be, again, as I mentioned, length of contract. It could be, potential in terms of how fast they're growing. It could be, what locations they're in, how many hires they need to do. There's a bunch of different metrics. And the ones that rank the highest will prioritize. So, and I think that we want to, as a business, really minimize the amount of churn in our customer
Yeah.
base. So, how can we sign clients that we can be with for the long haul, and also that we can provide the most service to and the most value to. So there could be some clients that sound really attractive coming in, that have a really big name, or they've got loads of press, and it'd be a really great kind of deal to make.
Yeah.
But it's something that you've never really done before. You're not sure if you can be effective, or bring a lot of value, and it would be a bit of a risk doing it. And maybe you could, but it might not be the best move when you've got better opportunities.
So how would you describe like the products of the within the business? Like, so I think one thing you said to me back in the day was, your bread and butter was your on-site, but you did have things like your marketing or branding suite
Hmm.
where you'd had a studio where there was employer branding work. Is it, how does it, is it literally, we're going to give you a recruiter to sit on site still, or is it totally different than it was back
Yeah,
then?
really interesting. Actually, you say that, and I think yeah, we did when we last spoke. We did have the employer brand proposition,
Hmm.
and I think one of the things that I'm a big advocate of is focus, and I think that we aren't necessarily experts in employer branding, you know, and what we are experts at is recruiting, right? And how do we build a business that is the best at that thing? And that is really hard to do in itself, right? And then do that globally in different states and different countries, and also and different skill sets. So I think we decided at one point, okay, how do we just double down? And I think that COVID and recession actually reignites this focus in you, because you start realizing, okay, if we have to cut things here because we don't have X amount of money, or we need to cut costs, like that really allows you to clearly see what your priorities are, right?
Mhm.
And so for us, it was, okay, well, let's just focus on what we're best at, what we think we can build as the world class thing here. I have no interest in being the second best at something. So
No.
what can we be the actual world leader at? And so I think that that's where that focus comes from. And so we what we do as a service is we have really four main areas, which is recruiting. So this is like full cycle recruiting. We have sourcing. So if some companies separate their sourcing and recruiting out, especially bigger enterprise, or they just want sourcing hubs built for them. So we do sourcing, and then coordination. So this is talent operations, and coordination. And then the fourth pillar is talent advisory. So they're the four pillars that we offer now for customers. And they can come and buy all of those products for us, from us, or they can buy one at a time, for example.
What's talent advisory?
So it's talent advisory is, for example, let's say I want to go and launch in a new geography, and I want some thorough research done around what that might look like, what the talent pools look like, what the law looks like, all
Salary
kinds of stuff.
expectations.
Yeah, salary expectations. It could be implementing a new technology suite. So it could be I want to put in a new ATS system, and at scale that's quite complicated. If I'm an Atlassian of thousands of people and I need to implement Greenhouse, how do you roll that out in the business? How do you put that out there and train all your people on that? So it's very recruitment related, talent advisory and strategy around that, and implementation and execution of certain projects. So that's what we do.
I like that. So you've almost simplified the business a little bit since back then. And then it sounds like in that process, what I picked up is you worked out some of the fundamental flaws in your contracts, in your terms that cost you or hurt you in the first wave of the pandemic, that you then fixed in those boom times, which put you in a good place for last year's difficult recession, right? Is that right?
Yeah, that's definitely a good summary.
Yeah.
And I think that's when you're running a business, that's going to be constantly happening. I think it's you're going to be refining your ideas, you're going to be trying new stuff, realizing this doesn't work, this does work. We can be successful here, we can't be successful here.
Yeah.
This is the stuff we need to fix, and you might not even realize what you need to fix until you're slapped in the face, right? And that's what recession is good for. You get a big slap in the face, right?
Can you give us an example of when that's happened to you, where you've you've messed that up?
Yeah, a lot. But let me talk about a good example. Okay, so the very easy one is, COVID. We had lots of people to say, right, we're not working with you anymore. We hand in our notice.
Yeah.
Right, and that's exactly one of the areas that you never even think about when people are hiring constantly, when everyone's growing, when the market's really positive, because no one does that. They just, if you're doing a good job, they keep on growing. And we thought, okay, as long as we just do a good job, we don't have to worry about the contract terms and the security there. And then a recession comes and you realize that the people that are in control are not the people you're dealing with a lot of the time. It's the CFO, it's the boards of these companies, and all they care about is survival. And what that means is just cutting costs, right? For a lot of the time. And so how can you protect yourself in that situation? And so for us, that there was two elements to that. It was, okay, we have a high proportion of our client base is earlier stage, and they're naturally more volatile. I mean, you've got to expect that if you're working with smaller companies. And we do 100% want a portion of our client base to be those companies because they're exciting. They can go on to be big companies. We want to be at the forefront of what people are doing. But it does create a lot of volatility, and we just can't at scale have a business that's reliant on majority of those businesses.
Yeah.
So we said, okay, well, we need to move up to enterprise. Like enterprise, needs to be a strategy for us, and increase the percentage of our client base that's representing enterprise companies. So that was one thing that we learned there, and then also contract terms. So maybe having cleverer ways to protect ourselves whilst giving the client more flexibility, or certain flexibility. Or it could be that it could be how we staff our teams. There's different ways you can approach that problem. It can be do you have a team of all perm people, or do you utilize contractors and perm people who allow you to scale up and scale down, almost like Talentful for Talentful, right? Like, how do you create a system where you can scale up and down with your own needs? And so there's different ways to solve the problem, but it definitely allows you to realize what those problems are. And I'm sure we'll keep realizing them, and something else will happen in the future, and we'll be like, oh crap, we need to change that. And I think that's the power of time, right? Like, that's why second time founders always get high rates of investment, because you learn so much that if now I went, and I'm sure you're the same, if you started another business from scratch, you'd feel like you had a superpower.
Yeah, you're different level.
Yeah. You've had 10 years of learning all this stuff the hard way, and you probably do a lot of stuff very differently from the start that would accelerate your progression. So it's to be expected, but I think you've got to be really open to changing and realizing that you made mistakes, and just be fast to fix them when you can.
So going into San Francisco was a clear play. You're on that Silicon Valley, LA, West Coast channel. How has that expanded across the US then, from that one location? And what was your journey personally like? Of you've moved across the country on the East Coast,
Hmm.
so talk us through that
Yeah.
movement.
Yeah, so we purposely went for that. We were looking at lots of different areas to move to the US. We looked at LA, we looked at New York, we looked at San Francisco, San Diego, Austin, a bunch of different places. But it was very clear to us that like the bulk of investment into technology companies comes from San Francisco. They have like a 25% market share of percentage of
Right.
investment, and it really is where all of the top technology businesses are for the most part. Now, COVID has changed that a little bit, but really it's still San Francisco. Um, and so we thought, okay, if we land in San Francisco, it's widely seen as like the tech epicenter of the world. If we do well here, we can leverage that, and we can say we've worked with the best tech companies in the world. We've been successful. So that was the approach. When we got there, it was just about networking, building our same approach as when we started the business in London. It's about winning case studies, building case studies, going in. You have to be more flexible when you're an unknown entity, like flexible on pricing, flexible on terms, flexible on whatever the client wants. Basically, you'll do it
Yeah.
to build those case studies. And then once you've got those case studies, you can start being a bit more aggressive on pricing terms, whatever, because people feel a level of confidence that you can deliver, and that you've been there and done it. So luckily, we grew our client base in San Francisco, worked with some incredible brands like Pinterest and Instacart and Atlassian and Alphabet, some really big brands that are well known out there. Did a great job, and then we got referred. Now, the really interesting thing about the US versus the UK specifically is almost everyone that comes in-house in the UK has been agency first.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And it's an incredibly competitive agency environment. There's tons of, like, you turn a corner and you bump into an agency recruiter, right? Like there's so many in the UK. And in the US, it's really not the same. And a lot of people start in HR, start in coordination, or just go straight in house, versus agency. And I think you can have a real opportunity to be successful if you've been in an agency environment and you take a lot of that urgency and that pace and the structure that agency gives you and take that in house in the US. You can be really successful. It's not as common either, so you kind of stand out a bit more. But so we kind of took the same approach we had in Europe and replicated it in the US, and that seemed to do really well inside these businesses. There's also a lot of, I'd say, in the US, they're a lot more strategic when it comes to talent. So, these companies have been around. The world's best technology companies were born in San Francisco. There's in-house talent leaders that have 30, 40 years of experience in-house. Like, you never get that in Europe, really.
Yeah.
It's a much more mature environment. So I think it's a much more, it feels more professionalized. It feels a bit more taken seriously. There's not the same stigma around, and I know that's changing for sure in Europe, but
Yeah.
it's seen at the same level as any other profession,
Yeah.
like
It's a
talent and
professional
recruiting.
role, like
Exactly.
lawyer or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. So that changes things quite significantly in terms of how you approach the market. So we did that, and then obviously COVID happened, which meant that it was a blessing in disguise for some sense, because then we didn't have to travel to these other states to pick up business in those states. They would come to us, or we could just reach out because no one could travel at that point anyway.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So then we started winning business in Austin and New York, in different locations. And that then set us up to say, okay, well, where are we getting the most demand from outside of San Francisco? There was also just the logistical issues. San Francisco is a great place, and I'm not against even going back there, and that might happen at some point. But 8 hours is a very big time difference, and I think even just the 5 versus the 8, New York versus West Coast, makes such a huge difference.
Yeah.
You only get a few hours crossover with the UK, and I'd be first meeting at 7 a.m. You really have like 3 hours with people, and then they're offline.
Yeah.
And that's hard to manage a business, especially when you're setting up a new company. And I want to be able to speak to our customers in the UK and in Europe, and I want to be able to work with our teams there.
Yeah.
So one of the big reasons why I moved to New York really wasn't really client led. It was more a business decision to be
Right.
in the center of, Europe and West Coast. So that was really it. So I can travel between both within 5 hours,
Yeah.
and be online for part of the West Coast day and part of the UK day.
Makes sense. A message from our sponsor, Vincere. Another of their products is known as Time Temp. This is your complete integrated timesheet workforce management solution. It's pre-built, it's pre-integrated, and it's designed so no matter how much your business grows, you'll be able to keep track of every single worker in one place in your CRM. All the changes inside Vincere will sync with Time Temp and they'll be fed back into your account, automating the entire process with two-way sync from your front to back office. Vincere's Time Temp enables you to create shift schedules, search available workers, shortlist and book assignments in seconds. They'll also allow you to track time, track leave, track expenses within their built-in payroll engine. It's called Door Clock. And then they've also got a mobile app for the on-the-go worker. If, again, you're looking to get more from your CRM, Vincere's Time Temp solution is another tool that enables you to perform more of your business-critical processes in your CRM. Find out if you could use Time Temp via the link in the show notes. Right, let's get back to it. You had this ratio kind of way of pre-pandemic way of working that was like people in the office, people not in the office. When everyone else was 5 days a week, you guys already had this like balance of working out where people were. So how did that then evolve as you all went remote fully? What has it evolved into? So how does it all work how did it work in the pandemic and how does it work now?
Yeah. So it was very interesting because we did have this hybrid way of working before the pandemic even happened. So it meant that when we did go remote, we had all the technology like the Slack, we had all the video conferencing, we were used to not seeing each other every day. So and being able to communicate and deliver our products and services effectively during that time. So it wasn't like a huge lift for us or like a big massive change.
No.
One of the things that we did really value, though, was those 2 days in the Talentful office where people would come together, and it was almost like coming home to your like home base, your base camp. And I think going through the process of not having that was the toughest part because, the challenge when you're in a model like ours and in a consulting model is that, your people are inside of a businesses for the majority of the time. And they can feel more so like those businesses than your business sometimes. And you want them to throw themselves into it and be deeply embedded. So that's something you're encouraging, but you need opportunities to bring them back in and say, look, well, this is where we really are, and show them the value of working at Talentful.
Yeah.
And so that's really hard to do when you can't get people together in a physical space or like get them together regularly. So that's taken us a few years to really even figure out. And this year we just introduced a partnership with this events company where we're actually taking money from our office budgets, and putting it into having company-wide global offsites regularly. So we're going to be bringing our teams together on a monthly and a quarterly basis to do kind of targeted team building and learning activities. So it could be, all of our new managers have an offsite to learn, how to be a manager. It could be all our leaders have an offsite, all our sales team have an offsite 1 month. And then we have a all company offsite once a year where we all fly somewhere and, do something really cool. So I think it's just imagining a new way to bring people together and to create that bond and that experience of being part of Talentful, and making sure it's valuable when they do see each other. I think it's one of those things that frankly is still on the table. There's
But did you go back to be having offices in every location, or what? So how does it look?
Yeah. Oh, so now we still have teams. So in the US, we have a majority of our teams in San Francisco, Austin, and New York. And then we have London and Berlin. So we have physical offices in Berlin, we have physical offices in London, and we have physical offices in New York. Okay. Now, actually, we just we're testing something out of our London office at the moment where we actually shut down the office, and we've given everyone this tool called DeskPass. So everyone has access to, there's like 100 offices across London and the area. and people can just book a desk and all go together. Like teams can get together and go to these desks whenever they want, and that's kind of manager driven, where they're like, okay, let's go to this office today and get together. So we're testing out different ways. I think, as you said before, having an office space where people are only in it twice a week,
it's a lot of money in it. It's a lot
of money. Yeah. And the question you need to ask yourself is, why are you doing it? Right? Like, what is the outcome you're trying to drive? And if people don't give a shit about it and it's not impacting how they feel about the business, then why are you doing it? And if it's not driving productivity, if it's not driving engagement and retention, why are you doing it? And so I think for us, it was about really reflecting on what is the outcome that we want and how can we drive that in a different way. And so that's what we're experimenting with at the moment. And I don't think there's an answer. I think everyone has different preferences. There's different ways you can skin a cat, and they're all as valid as each other. Right? Some people love working in office 5 days a week. Some people never want to go into an office again, and you're both entitled to those opinions. But each company has to decide.
Would you hire both of those people and try and fit that together then?
I don't think so. I think that we're not going to go back to a 5-day in office. Now, I think if I started a company again from scratch, would I want 5 people, 5 days in office? Probably. Or at least 4 days. Because I think there's something about a very early stage business when you're growing it from scratch, that just the speed that you can do things when you're in person is totally different. And just the energy, you need that in-person energy, I think, when you're building a business from scratch. Now, when you get to a certain size, every company is distributed because you have ambitions to go abroad. So by nature, your people aren't together, right? And your CFO might be in a different country to your CEO, and so on and so forth. And you've got to learn, if you want to be a global business, how to manage that. That's just inevitability. So I think having a business at a bigger scale, you have to just become comfortable with that. Yeah. And if you can drive efficiency and reduce cost at the same time, then and make people happy, then it's a win-win. I think it's still up for debate. Can you create a business that's as successful, as productive whilst doing all this? And we're still measuring all that stuff. So the jury's out, but we're definitely trying lots of different ways, and we're taking people's feedback and trying to do the best we can.
Main thing. So talk us through 2023 then, because I imagine everyone I know had a pretty tough year. You go in, what was your business like when you went into it, and then what happened subsequently?
Yeah, so at the end of 2022, we could tell that things were going down. I try and keep as close as I can to the economic landscape, what's going on, and there was lots of signals that especially the early stage market, like venture capitalists and people were telling their companies to prepare for a bad year and to cut their burn rate as much as possible. So we could tell that was happening, and we were getting noises from companies that their hiring plans were going on hold, and they were reducing headcount and all that kind of stuff. So towards the end of 2022, we made the difficult decision to reduce our team size, and that was really, in a business like ours, your biggest cost is bench, is having people that are unassigned to projects. And, we definitely, because we're a bootstrap company, we can do whatever we want, and we don't have to be as aggressive on cutting costs as if we had investors telling us what to do. And so, but it was very clear to us that we had to reduce our team size, or we have a duty to protect the business and the majority of the employees. So we decided that was the best decision, and so we did that at the end of 2022 in early Q4, and then we're monitoring the situation, and we actually spent a ton of money keeping people who were not on projects for as long as possible. We spent over £1 million just keeping people on the bench, basically. And so, the reason we did that is because we know that the market's coming back. It's inevitable. We built up a lot of cash. We invest that cash back into the business. Now, we think it's really important that, when things do come back, that people know what companies how they treated their people. And we did as much as we could to keep us people for as long as possible. We kind of went away from the traditional path of like focusing on profit, and we said, okay, we're going to take a hit here to protect our people. And now that the market is coming back, subsequently we've been able to rehire about 50 people, that we did have to part ways with. And I think that would be very hard to do if you had treated them badly.
Yeah,
right?
I agree. Yeah.
So we had that approach of just being kind of where possible. Obviously, you have to protect the business. You have to make the right decisions and make tough decisions.
What was happening though? Was it just a higher churn and slower sales ratio, like as simple as that, or what were the signs?
I think recruiting is very simple to some degree. It's what drives demand is high amount of investment and growth into your customers, and consequently a hiring need. And it has to, for us, it has to be a surplus hiring need that their current internal teams can't handle. Right. So what was happening a lot of the time is these companies would have some steady hiring, but it could be handled by their internal team. So they didn't need a partner. Right. Now, for us to thrive, there has to be a real high demand for internal recruiters. Right. Now, most internal recruiters got laid off last year. Right. So there's tons of them on the market. So, and then there has to be like lots of hiring and headcount going on at these businesses, like surplus headcount requirements. And all of that just stopped. People were making layoffs. People were putting budgets on hold. So all of the metrics that we need to be successful were going backwards, basically.
How big a hit was it?
So I can't go into specifics, but it was big. I mean, we had to lay off 100 people.
Yeah.
Right.
Do you have to manage a lot of that yourself?
Yeah. Well, so we have a people team who did a lot of the work, and they were absolutely incredible during that time in terms of the logistics, doing all the just all the infrastructure around how you have to do a good layoff. And Joe, when a layoff hits a certain size, especially in Europe, you have to run a proper consultation process. Yeah. And that is intricate, and you have to really be careful of how you're treating people and make sure people feel like it's been done properly. And it's very emotional for lots of people. So it was very hard to do. Now, I take a lot of responsibility in the decisions, and I made sure that I was the person communicating this to everyone. I was the person who was, letting everyone know. I wrote the scripts. I, communicated it in person to everyone. And then I was there if people did want to chat, and I tried to be there for people when possible. And help people out if they wanted references or they wanted connections to certain people or so on and so forth. So, it's just a very difficult decision. It's very hard for people to understand in the moment because, it's obviously a very personal thing. And it's something that you never want to do as a business owner. Like no one, unless you're insane, takes pleasure in, having to lay people off. No. When you're laying people off, the situation has got so bad that there's no other option. And especially for a bootstrap business like ours, we can't just burn loads of money because we'll go out of business. Yeah. So that was the most important thing. I think that the very interesting thing about last year though is, and this is the thing that was in the back of our mind that kept us kind of driving forwards, was at the end of the year, the use case for our model was stronger than it's ever been in history because we've had COVID, where these companies laid off all their recruiters. Yeah. They then went crazy, rehired a bunch of them, paid them crazy salaries, then laid them all off again, which cost them God knows what on redundancy packages. At what point
did they realize you're better off having a flexible partner than just fucking playing musical chairs with people? Yeah.
Exactly. And I think they have realized now. And what we're starting to see is, a real push towards using partners to help grow and have a core team of perm people, but then augmenting it with a flexible partner or agencies, whoever else, but not a fixed cost, right? And so I think that it's going to be a really good next 5 years of strong growth, and we're even drinking the Kool-Aid ourselves. Like we've started bringing on, wherever we can bring on outsourced partners internally, we will do it versus building our own teams. Mm-hmm. because we feel like having that flexibility and a partner that can really grow with you and scale up and down is incredibly valuable. And I think actually what happens is when a recession happens, there's a boom and a push towards outsourcing because people have just felt all this pain.
Yeah.
And then the longer you become detached from the pain, the longer the time goes. You're like, oh no, I don't have to think about that. I can just build my own team.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Then you get slapped in the face again, and then you're like, okay, no, that was a mistake. I need to, build some
It's
flexibility.
just
And so,
cycles and cycles.
exactly,
Yeah.
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 So, I'm feeling very positive about the future. And obviously, we made these additions to our business as well, which I think have put us in a real, investing in that in a down year. I think was a good decision because it meant we could prepare ourselves and put ourselves in a strong position when it did come back. So
So
yeah.
those two additions, then one is the community.
Mm-hmm.
So what obviously, I mean, I can imagine it, but what's the actual obvious benefit for you to have ownership of that community? 12,000. Is it so you can hire them? Is it so they know who you are and they can bring you on board when they land somewhere?
Yeah, so we believe the future of go to market and how businesses build relationships with their customers is going to completely flip on its head. And I think that AI and automation is actually driving a lot of this change because the playing field is so leveled that everyone sounds the same, looks the
Mm.
same, sending the same outreach. And this is what you're selling with your business, right? Is that you've got to differentiate.
I actually think my business now is almost selling against AI and automation
Yeah.
because how often do you get hit with the emails? Like, I know a quick question, Chris. Like, I'm like, fucking hell, it's 5, 10 a day. When I was selling HubSpot stuff in 2019, no one was doing it. And I was like,
Mhm.
wow, look, I can set up 7 emails that are going to go out in 10 days. People were falling off their chairs. Recruiters are now getting on board with that. And I'm like, well, this is moving on now. Authenticity to me is what works. That's the bit that people buy. The scary thing is if AI can do that. Like,
Yeah.
you can create a fake person. Like there's these humans now that look real and they're not. And you're like,
Yeah.
right, can you soon take a scan of you, write a script, and it'll create a YouTube video as animated as the best YouTuber on the planet? If it does, fuck knows what we're doing next.
Yeah.
But it ain't there yet. We're not
Yeah.
there yet.
Yeah. I mean, there is so many. I mean, whilst AI is incredibly exciting, it's also something that I'm having nightmares about because
Yeah.
it has the potential to just replace everyone, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And the question then is, what does everyone do? But let's not think about that yet. But
Let
that,
someone else do it.
yeah, yeah. But yeah, exactly. So the key is building deep relationships, and remote work has made this even harder with people who are going to be your customers and provide as much value as possible. And we've never had a real salesy approach to sales. We've never been like real hard, like knocking on people's doors, like chasing them down. It's always been all of our biggest customers have been relationships that have been cultivated over years and years and years, going for dinners, getting to know them, and frankly, being their friends and counting them as friends now, right?
Yeah.
And I think that building community for us is a great way to do that, because we get to provide value to our customers by doing events and providing benchmarks and data and doing some really interesting stuff with the community. But we can turn it into its own brand on its own. We can run big marquee events. We can sell sponsorships to our Talent 100 awards, or we can sell sponsorships to our quarterly state of TA reports that we do. It can generate revenue on its own.
Mm-hmm.
So for us, this really is just a new channel to bring value to our customers, to understand our customers more, and to build relationships with
What's
them.
it hosted in? Is it like a Slack group or something? Or is it?
Yeah, Slack group. Now that
Right.
might change over time, but at the moment it's Slack.
Yeah.
We're doing a lot of work. We acquired the community, so it was actually where me and Phil met originally,
Yeah.
10 years ago, and it didn't. The owners did an incredible job of building this community organically, but it didn't have a ton of structure. It didn't have lots of employees. It didn't have. It hadn't been kind of professionalized. And so there's lots of work over the last year that we've been doing about putting a lot of the foundations in place that we can really start going for it and doing some really exciting stuff, which we're gonna start doing this year. So I'm really excited about that part of our business actually, and I think it will allow us to build relationships with new people, but also give our current customers access to something that's unique in the market. So when we're if someone joins Talentful as a customer, they get access to VIP events in cities around the world every single month. They get access to benchmarks and data that's driven by hundreds of the best TA people in the world. They get it before anyone else, early access. There's lots of benefits that we can now bring, almost like when you go and you get Amazon Prime. You're kind of getting taken into this extra layer of service that you couldn't get otherwise.
Yeah,
And
that's
so
on top of the nuts and bolts, which is we'll recruit great people for you, and that's it. You stick true to what your core business is, and then you just add supplementary services on top that don't take you away from what you're good at.
Absolutely.
Yeah, you're not trying to be a marketing digital agency or whatever. Like, you don't need to be.
Yeah.
It's funny. In the pandemic, we've done the same thing. So like the whole business I had when you met me is gone. Like I don't do it anymore. So the marketing agency of Hoxo doesn't exist anymore. We are a coaching and advisory business or a branding specialist agency that we manage the odd website, but the majority of what we do is we teach recruiters how to use LinkedIn, and I'm now coaching founders and building a community of what I think are the best minds in the industry of how they're building a recruitment business with brand as their number one asset. So it's like getting, I've got all these clients around the world that all do such cool things, but they don't know each other. And I'm like, fuck, you're doing really well on your own with my help, but what if I could put you in a room and all these other communities, like, I won't name them, but there's like loads of recruitment founder communities. They're great, and I'm not taking anything away from them, but you go there and it is literally front to back. Any topic to do with recruitment agencies covered, and marketing and brand always is one tiny element of such a big beast. And I'm like, I don't want to worry about all the other things. Go and get them from someone else. Like, we're just gonna double down on this. We're gonna focus on this. And for some people, they won't be interested, but for those that are, it's growing really quickly. So
it's really interesting.
Similar though. It's just going right. What are we good at? What do we love? What are we famous for? What do we want to be the best at?
Yeah.
Exact same mindset. So what does the future look like then? That's my final question. Like we've done 8.5 years or whatever since you started. You still look the same as well, which annoyingly. I'm so much grayer than when I met you last time. I just looked at the video before. My beard's gone. I'm fucking haggard. You look the bloody same, mate. If anything, you look younger.
Mate, inside, not so much. I've probably knocked about 20 years off my life. Trust me.
If we meet again in 4 years' time on the show, hopefully it'll be sooner. What will you be? What might be happening? What do you think? What's the future hold?
So I think the future of our business is embedded services, its community, and its technology. And so I hope that next time that we meet, we've been able to really drive efficiency and hit our goals in our services businesses, which is really aiming at moving up and taking share of more enterprise spend. So that's really where we want to go. We want to still have a portion, like 20% of our revenue coming from earlier stage companies, but 80% should be coming from enterprise. Ideally, international global projects.
Where's that at now? What percentage are you at now, would you say?
About 60%.
Right.
Yeah. So that's really where we're trying to go. And we're trying to build our name as the go-to embedded partner for the world's best technology businesses. That's still the aim. That's where we really want to focus. So hopefully we just continue chipping away. We might not be there yet, but we should be a lot further on that journey. Then we should have this thriving global community of the world's best talent, in-house talent leaders. Hopefully we're running a big, exciting event every year, and we're putting out amazing content that allows talent leaders and professionals to be better at their jobs. That's what we want. We want to level up the industry. We want to make sure that talent leaders have a seat at the table. One of the things that we really noticed during these downturns is that, talent leaders get spoken down to a lot of the time. It's like, okay, when things are going well, your teams all get sacked and you don't have a say. right? And when we're doing really well, there's tons of pressure on you to deliver, and you've got to go and make all these hires happen, really quickly without a lot of support. And so what we want to do is drive decision making power to talent leaders and allow them to move higher up the food chain. So that's really what we're trying to get to there, and empower talent leaders. And then technology, this is the big bet. This is I'd say the one that is still earlier stage and probably the most difficult to achieve. But as we want to have a lot of our early stage revenue solely on the Talentverse, which is a platform that matches teams and talent together automatically. And so we want this to be a self-serve product. Right now we have a lot of customers that come to us that are kind of earlier stage, that maybe have 1 to 10 hires. They're using recruitment agencies or they're using different partners. And we want them to be able to self-serve, to come onto this platform, to create a job and to speak directly with talent and organize the whole process via this platform automatically. And so instead of saying no to these customers and saying, okay, you're too small for us right now, they come into the Talentverse and they have an amazing experience. And if they grow, they can then go on to our, normal services. So having this kind of...
So many people have tried this and I've not seen anyone crack it yet.
I know.
So I hope it's you.
Mate, I hope so too. We've given ourselves the best shot. We actually hired Charles Heinrich, who I used to work with at Shazam. He was the CTO of Shazam, the music recognition company. We hired him 2 years ago, and he's like a world-class technologist. He was the VP of engineering at Google in San Francisco, Yahoo, SurveyMonkey. He's got an exceptional background, and he's just awesome. And he's come on board to build this product for us over the last 2 years. So we're giving ourselves the best chance possible. So let's see. I mean, it is a very hard problem. And I think whilst we're building it, it's very interesting. The technology part is obviously difficult, but the thing about recruiting that makes it so hard is you're dealing with human beings.
Yeah.
Right. And controlling the variables for human beings is so difficult that humans are their own worst enemies. Right. And in a lot of ways. And so trying to make a process seamless by technology is really difficult because of the human element, right? And how volatile and unpredictable humans are. So it's almost about educating both sides of the marketplace to be able to create an amazing experience, which is really difficult. So yeah, we'll see. Fingers crossed. Hopefully, next time I'm on, we can maybe talk about some successes there,
mate. Next time you're on, we're doing it in person. The show is coming back. The show's coming back to in-house at some point this year. That's my plan, because I've been remote since the pandemic and it's been great. And it is, look, to be able to just jump on with you in New York, it's incredible. But I miss the face-to-face stuff. I did a day in Dubai in January and it was just like, I was like, it's back to the old days. It was tiring. I did like 5 episodes in a day, but if I can do 1 day a month in London and then I can get out to New York for a day here and there, I can get to Australia, get to the UAE, Singapore. Like there's hubs all over the world where there's some amazing recruitment founders and stories that I'd like to tell. And I feel like, one, I'd love to be in these places face to face with people. And I think the quality and the experience is just better. So, mate, this was great. Thanks so much. And I've got every faith. If anyone's going to crack this, you will. I've loved watching your journey. If anyone I asked you this last time and I don't know if they did, but if people do want to reach out and ask you any questions, anyone's got any reasons to just pick your brains, you're always responsive with me. So are you okay for people to drop you a note on LinkedIn?
Yeah, I'm always responsive to people. I think the one thing to caveat is I can't spend my time, I have to prioritize Talentful, and I can't spend my time talking to lots of people all the time. But I'm responsive. If people want to get in touch, say hi.
People got a genuine question.
Yeah. We can chat. Yeah, exactly.
Hit you up with a genuine question. Yeah, don't.
Yeah, if they just want some free advice, then maybe not.
Don't ring me about it either. I do not know. I'm not the guy. I don't know his stuff that well. That's what I'm signing off. Chris, you're an absolute legend, mate. Thanks so much for your time, and hopefully, definitely we'll get you on in less than 4 years.
Love chatting to you, Sean. Cheers.
Thanks, brother. Thank you as always for listening to today's show. I truly hope that you got value from it. Honestly, it's the only reason I take time every week to ensure that my audience, you guys, future and existing recruitment owners, you're learning from each other to make this industry that I love so much stronger. And today's episode is brought to you by my business, Hoxo. I'm the CEO and founder, And we're on a mission to help brand recruitment agencies and their people better. I want to help people have the tools to stand out in the most competitive markets in the world. We're currently working with over 350 recruitment agencies and 5,000 of their consultants right now, helping them to build their personal brands, to consistently win more business, attract talent, and just become that go-to recruiter in the market. Now, we do have a huge coaching program, but a lot of people don't know we also manage the brands of a lot of founders, and we can do the rebrand of that company organizational piece as well. So if your recruitment agency either needs help to look and sound exactly how you want it to, or your leadership and consultant level need to get out there and drive more traffic back to that website, to the business, and start using LinkedIn to generate more revenue, then you should definitely be reaching out to us. If that sounds of interest, please do visit www.hoxomedia.com or drop me, Sean, a personal message on LinkedIn. I love hearing from RAG listeners. I would love to talk to you. Look forward to it. So I'll see you again next week with another episode. Catch you soon.